The following podcast contains explicit language, spoilers for the film Bad Santa, and discussion of adult themes. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello, everyone, and welcome to DVD Clutter. This is the podcast where I, Maddie, and my partner, Heather, say hello.
Hi, everybody.
We're going to talk about a movie from our DVD collection, and we're going to revisit it and sort of discuss how we came to have it in our collection and what it's meant to us, and reflect on whether it means the same thing moving forward and whether we want to keep it. At the end of each episode, we're going to decide whether we want to move on from the DVD to make more space in our collection for the next one or not. And today we're getting into the holiday spirit with a really uplifting film, Bad Santa by Terry Zwigoff.
When it came to holiday spirit,
Look who's here. It's Santa.
I'm on my lunch break, okay?
Willie's never had it.
It's not real.
Well, it was real. I got sick and all the hair fell out.
How'd you get sick?
I loved a woman that wasn't clean.
Mrs. Santa?
No, it was her sister.
Now, Heather, this is one of the ones that you brought into our collection.
Yes.
This is a film that's meant a lot to you, I think, over the years. So let's get into it. Tell me, what does Bad Santa mean to you?
So, Bad Santa for me is my favorite holiday movie of all time. In 2003, I saw it in the theaters with a group of my friends. There was a huge group of us going out on a Friday night to see it. And I just thought it was the funniest thing I'd ever seen, at that point. It was just my kind of humor. As a person who's not a Christmas person, I am a Halloween person through and through. So sentimental Christmas movies don't usually hit for me, but Bad Santa hit all the marks for me. It was my kind of humor, and I just had never seen Billy Bob Thornton in a movie before, and I thought he was perfect in this role, just hysterical. And since I saw it in the movies, I showed it to my younger brother, not much younger than me, but it became a thing for us where every Christmas Eve we would watch Bad Santa, and we just looked forward to it. We still quote it to each other, to this day. So I just have a lot of really fond memories of that being my Christmas movie that I would watch every year.
It's interesting because I feel like a lot of the films, like one of the reasons that I kind of want to do this project is to kind of revisit films that, like, when I was younger, I was a little bit, more edgelord in a way. I wanted to, the movies had to be dark for me. They had to be like, they had to have a particular vibe, and or I couldn't take them seriously. And I feel like Bad Santa kind of fits into that. And as I get older, and I really, I'm sort of like turning my back on a lot of that, and I find, and I have stuff to say about this, but I wanted to ask you first, like, where do you think Bad Santa lands in that continuum? Is it just, sort of like the crude humor, or is there more to it than that?
So I think there is more to it than that. Upon this rewatch, I still feel like the movie has a lot of heart, and I think that's why it's held up for me. I think the performances, especially of Thurman Merman, played by Brett Kelly, has so much, they're so endearing. And I don't really feel like the things that get played for laughs in the movie, for example, the fact that Thurman is, he's a chubby kid, he gets picked on, but I always feel like Billy Bob Thornton's character, Willie, he's there to, he comes to love Thurman, and he wants to see him succeed. And it's sort of like Thurman gives him a purpose in life. And I think that's where the heart of the movie lies. I don't feel like it's ever really that mean-spirited. It's, it's got that crude humor, and it's got a lot of that early 2000s humor, but I don't feel like it's ever goes to a place where I feel like, this is just mean for being mean's sake.
I think it does at points, but I also think that, like, what makes it work for me is the fact, and, maybe this is the point where I want to get into a little bit of, like, my relationship to the film, which is, I didn't really grow up with it the same way. I remember it coming out, and I kind of felt like at that point, the idea of, like, a drunk mall Santa, it was something that it's one of those things where it feels like such an overused trope, like a cliche, but it's not something where it was like, it's like I look back and I'm like, there really aren't that many examples I can think of. Maybe Trading Places, Scrooged are the ones that kind of come to mind. But I think that what makes this work is that it really kind of sympathizes a lot with the Billy Bob Thornton's character with Willie's relationship to addiction.
Yes.
I feel like that really comes through, and it feels very personal in a way. This was directed by Terry Zwigoff, who had previously done Ghost World, which was a big film for me, and he had done the documentary Crumb. And he had previously, he'd given a lot of interviews where he talked about struggling with mental health. And I think that there's really kind of a lived-in reality to that character that you don't always get in a lot of films like this.
Yeah.
And for me, Ghost World was probably the one that I don't remember when I saw it. I don't remember if you showed it to me or if it was one that I watched in college and film school, but it was, if I did, it would have been because of the Terry Zwigoff connection, because I loved Ghost World so much growing up. You mentioned how, like some of the 90s crude humor is definitely there, and I feel like that might be a common thing with a lot of the DVDs in our collection. I counted 3 R words, which weirdly I feel like they're kind of making a comeback this year. I've seen a bunch of movies this year where they want to use that, and that's such a nails on a chalkboard to me at this point. Yeah. But I do feel like there is a heart to it, and that there is a lot of that there is sort of an understanding of the reality of characters like this, people like this who just can't get their lives together and don't even have a roadmap to do it.
Yeah. I find myself really rooting for Willie throughout the movie. I want to see him get his shit together. I want to see him form a bond with this kid. I want to see him connect to something that's not alcohol. And there are a few scenes that actually really get me. I want to talk specifically about the scene where Thurman gives him the wooden pickle. This scene, honestly, you know what? It brings a bit of a tear to my eye, because you can just see, that pretense in him, that shield that Willie's got up just kind of coming down in that scene. And he's just kind of he just kind of sits with this thing, and, you can just tell that this means something to him. And he's realizing what I say to this kid and what I do and how I treat him matters. And maybe I kind of matter too in the world. And I think it's such a silly but beautiful scene in the movie.
I kind of get the sense that, maybe Willie has never gotten a Christmas present before.
Yeah.
Or he's never gotten a Christmas present that somebody made for him. And certainly, there's also that great plant and payoff where earlier the kid comes screaming, his hand is bleeding, and then later we find out that was because he was trying to carve the wooden pickle.
Right. And, up until this point, you start to see, for me, the turning point in the movie is when Willie wakes up and realizes that he ripped apart the kid's advent calendar. And you could kind of see there that he's thinking, oh shit, I went too far, and he tapes the thing back together and he puts candy corn and aspirin in it. And it's he's trying, and I think it's just one of those things where he's realizing, okay, maybe I kind of matter to this kid, and maybe this kid kind of matters to me too. And, I can maybe try a little bit, and just because something's not important to me, or I think it's stupid that he's doing this fucking advent calendar, maybe because it's important to him, then it can be important to me too. And I'm going to take a little bit of, put a little pride into things and a little effort into my life.
I love the idea that him putting pride into things is haphazardly taping the advent calendar shut. I like the idea that the film almost kind of mocks his redemption arc even as we're getting it. There's that great scene where he gets revenge on the kids who are bullying him, and then he's we cut to him in the locker room.
Yeah.
Excuse us, we are waiting for our dog to finish scratching herself.
Okay.
Emmy, what do you think about Bad Santa?
Okay.
But I love we cut to the locker room and he's like, I think I've turned a corner.
Yeah.
And it's like this like very serious moment that he just does like that's just played entirely for laughs, and those are kind of like the funniest moments because it's like on one hand it's like, yeah, you kind of have in a way, but on the other hand it's like you've done so little and you're still digging the hole deeper as you do it.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit too about the supporting cast. For me in this movie, it's John Ritter as Bob Chapeska. He is just so wonderful in this role. I think he is so, the cringe stuff that he says, he just digs himself deeper and deeper into these holes. He is, I think, one of the best things about this movie.
He has great interplay, especially with Bernie Mac.
Yes.
The two of them together are just classic.
Yeah.
A couple of days ago, I was in Women's Big and Tall, and I heard these, these noises, and I heard a woman screaming, "Yeah, oh yeah." But don't get me wrong, I'm was against the Clinton impeachment. What a man does with his own penis, Oval Office, Women's Big and Tall, it's not for the American people to say.
Yeah, right.
Bernie Mac in this movie, so great. I love where he is stealing the MP3 player, sign of the times MP3 player, from the kid in the, what is it? The game store? Like game store, whatever you want to call it. GameStop. Kind of love that this movie also has like a lot of that mall culture-y stuff. You've got everybody's eating at the food court, and you've got the stores, you've got a department store which like hardly even exists these days in the way that it did in the movie. I feel like that experience of going to the department store as a kid and going to see Santa.
I didn't even think of that, how it is really a time capsule for like the 90s 2000s mall, because they do not exist anymore the way that they did.
Yeah, not in that way. And I don't know what your experience going to see Santa in the mall was, but I as a kid I was like, this is cool. I guess it's Santa. It's.
Yeah, well, I was always told it was one of the elves.
Oh, it was one of the elves.
It was one of the elves that
one of the helpers.
Santa was busy, and he had to get the elves to fill that role.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is kind of funny because that itself kind of defeats the purpose in a way, but
yeah. There's a lot of great interactions between Willie and the kids that come up to him. Fraggle Rock Stick kid has to be one of my favorite ones, where he's just like, I want a Fraggle Rock Stick. Willie just doesn't give a shit what these kids want. I feel like the ways in which he kind of horrifies the adults too, especially in that one scene where he's just, he just shows up and he's kicking the donkeys, the decorations and all this stuff. And it's really sad, actually, and really playing into what you were talking about, where, he is an addict and people are just experiencing his rock bottom. And there's really nobody there to help him, and I don't know. What do you sort of make of those scenes in the mall?
I think that's maybe something that doesn't entirely work for me in the film, because I feel like they are kind of like overplayed, like they come up with a funny justification for, that's also in a way kind of very like 90s 2000s, where everybody was afraid of like, PC culture. Yeah. And so they tried to like, they strong-armed the manager of the mall with threats of a lawsuit and like bringing like a union of little people to protest and stuff and make a big scene out of it. I think that it doesn't entirely work for me because he is so incompetent at being a Santa Claus. Yeah. And this kind of gets to something that I always kind of like brush up against whenever I watch movies about crime, and like also just the reality of crime as well, where like the amount of work that goes into being an effective criminal and not getting caught is so much more than the amount of work of like just, showing up and being a mall Santa. And it's like if you were to just show up and be a mall Santa, you would be a more effective criminal.
Yeah, but you're also...
I mean, that wouldn't be much of a movie.
Yeah,
but...
exactly.
but you get what I'm saying? Like I felt like in having to play those scenes for the comedy that they did, and I didn't really find a lot of it as funny as probably intended. You know, it kind of undercuts, I think, some of the suspension of disbelief for me because they have to make it so over the top, and it's like after the third kid, there's no way that parents would still be going up to him at that point.
Absolutely not. And there's no way that this guy is actually holding on to that job for as long as he is. Like, threats
exactly.
Or not. You know, I guess the John Ritter character just seems so incompetent at his job that you can kind of be like, all right, well, maybe he's just trying to get through this holiday season and like just get through with this Santa. He doesn't want any more drama. Just let it be over is kind of the sense I get from him.
And I feel like, you know, it's funny because it's like, this is like an annual thing for them.
Right.
And they do like, and I think that they're pretty upfront about a lot of other elements of it too, where it's like, you know, he's such a wreck. You know, he's got this plan to go move to Miami and start his own business with $100,000, which like, if that, I was still in high school when the movie came out, so I don't know what $100,000 was worth back then, but you know, that's laughable today, obviously. But like, you know, watching him, you know, not be able to function even once getting the money because he hasn't learned any discipline, because he hasn't had the chance to sort of understand how to build a life for himself with that. Right.
Something else I wanted to touch on that I just thought of when we were talking about it being kind of a time capsule is the fact that there are just no cameras apparently anywhere in this mall, because, you know, as soon as they turn off that alarm system, they are just good to go, and they are hanging outside the building. You know, they're clearly not focused on anyone else seeing them do anything. There was also, I think, this scene where Willie breaks into he steals the car, and then he breaks into someone's house. And I loved the little addition of how he's drinking milk and eating chicken from the fridge. You know, he's this...
That was such a great scene, because I love when they get into process with stuff like that. So, you know, he goes to the valet, just takes a bunch of keys, and is just going through the parking lot, just trying different ones out until he gets to the fanciest car. Finds the title for the vehicle, goes to the person's house, and then is like, I'm just gonna enjoy it here. And it's sort of also, I think it's such a great point in that scene, because you're getting a sense of like, he's like trying on what a successful life would be and hating it just as much. Yeah. And I love how it just mimics the Santa, you know, the mythology of Santa, which is just like, we're happy to just invite, you know, a man into our house to eat milk and cookies. But when it's Billy Bob Thornton coming in and he's like just disgusting and he's drinking milk out of the carton and eating chicken, it's like, no, it's kind of an interesting like take on the Santa, you know, just kind of what makes the holidays, if you think too much about them and you think too much about the myth of Santa Claus, just kind of makes it all really silly. And I don't know, I just thought it was kind of an interesting little tidbit in there that they put in. It is. I didn't really think of it that way, but that's a good observation. And I think, again, that's kind of what I love so much about this movie, is that it's a Christmas movie, but it's sort of like, you know, Willie thinks that this Christmas shit is kind of bullshit. And, you know, he even has that one line where he's talking to Marcus about like, why do you need all this shit? You know, it's not just enough to get the money. It's like, you have to also take all this shit. That's also a very funny scene to me, because it's like, he's spent the entire movie being such a piece of shit to everybody. Yeah. And Marcus is having to clean up his mess. Yeah. And that's why Marcus is going to kill him in that moment. Yeah. But like, he has not earned the high horse there, because he's a thief just like Marcus. And it's like okay, he's gonna go buy alcohol with it instead. Yeah, exactly. We haven't actually talked about Marcus. What can we say about Marcus? He's a great character. He's a great character. Do you think he is a little bit of a moral authority
for Willie. I mean, he certainly acts like it.
I think, you know, I think that he is. I think that he's the one who's doing all the work of keeping that scheme together, and I think that he's growing to realize that Willie is too much of a liability.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's sick of having to keep, like, literally prop him up at points because of his alcoholism. And I think there maybe is also a little bit of pity there. You know, which is kind of hidden behind like all of these like macho insults sort of thing. But there is that betrayal at the end, you know, where I feel like it kind of becomes like I kind of don't know what to make of that, because he could have just taken the money and run and left Willie to take the fall for it as well.
Yeah, he does hesitate a little bit. He repeats that line, like, it's just me, you, and I can't recall the name of his girlfriend right off the bat, but, you know, he repeats that line.
Lois, I think?
Lois, yeah, it's just me, you, and Lois.
Just men and Lois.
Men and
just
Lois.
Grown men and Lois.
And, you know, he says it twice, and you could kind of see he's hesitating a little bit, but ultimately, you know, he is a criminal, and this is a criminal operation, and Willie is a huge liability.
One of the things that I really like about Willie is that they make such a good job of, like, you know, making him really the most likable character in the movie, I would say.
Yeah.
And then you get to that point where he and Lois murder Bernie Mac.
Right.
And it's so violent and so cold in terms of their approach to it.
Yeah.
And I really love when characters are just like coldly practical in a film, you know, where like they don't pay attention to, you know, they might be otherwise decent people, but for the most part they're going to make the decision that is self-serving.
Sure.
And, you know, I think that's like such a shift in tone for the film.
Yeah.
And I think because we're so invested in his character up until that point, that we really, like, I think that's what really makes that land so well for me.
Yeah. I agree. And some other things, well, I guess in keeping with this is, you know, talking about how Willie kind of comes around in the end, is that, you know, Willie gets the pink elephant to Thurman in the end. And I think that's, you know, kind of a beautiful thing. And it's got blood on it, just like Thurman's present to him had. You know, and I think that, I think it's just a really beautiful ending, kind of, you know, in its own way. You know, I think this movie has a lot of heart to it. And I think that it's kind of a, I think it holds up for me. I think it really holds up.
I like that the arc of the film is not him going from being a shitty person to being a good person.
Yeah.
It's from him being a shitty person to a slightly less shitty person.
Yeah, and that's why it feels realistic to me, and it doesn't feel like this hokey, sentimental change in this person. You know, he's not like Ebenezer Scrooge or like the Grinch. He's, you know, he is, although those are also wonderful characters that I love.
His heart doesn't grow 3 sizes. It grows like
it
a quarter of a size.
Yeah, he's still Willie, but he's able to sort of show kind of like compassion and in his way. And I think that that's kind of like the beauty of the movie.
And I think that it also, you know, it feels very earned, whereas a lot of other films feel very like Pollyannish because the film is so bleak in terms of that character, and because it doesn't overestimate his redemption arc.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to add about the film before we wrap it up?
There's just a few little tidbits of info that I wanted to give out to you here. Executive produced by the Coen brothers.
I noticed that.
Not sure if you noticed that.
Yeah, the Coen brothers and Harvey Weinstein.
Right. Well, we're not gonna. I was gonna leave that out, but the Coen brothers. You know, we are big Coen brothers fans.
I feel like we should just have a button of like Harvey Weinstein alert, because probably
if it's a Dimension film from that time period, it's.
I feel like a not inconsequential chunk of our collection. His name is on.
It is, and you know, when we were watching the menu to this very old DVD that I've had since it came out, so it's 20 plus years old. You know, there are lots of movies from Dimension that I would consider my favorites, and unfortunately he is a part of the making of all of those movies, which is something we could talk at length about another time, I'm sure.
Speaking about the DVDs, we watched the Batter Santa cut, the unrated
Yes,
version.
this was the
so
unrated
I
version.
don't remember the differences between the theatrical version and the version that we watched and the version that's in our collection.
Yeah. One other tidbit is Octavia Spencer cameo as
Yeah.
Opal, the sex worker.
She
So,
was
had a little
great,
fun.
but it was funny because I didn't even like recognize
Yeah.
her with the pink with the pink wig.
Just kind of fun. And something new for me.
Underused, in my opinion.
Underused, definitely. But, kind of fun that she's in it. And this was something that I just realized upon this rewatch, and I couldn't wait to tell you. But the safe is called the Kittner Boy Readout. Kittner Boy. What does that remind you of?
Oh gosh,
The Kittner Boy.
The Kittner. It's so familiar. I know it's a horror movie. I know it's a slasher movie.
Yes, it is.
Is
I
it?
guess
Oh,
we
it's
can consider-
Jaws.
Yeah,
It's
of course
Jaws.
it's Jaws. I guess, of course. That's another episode considering Jaws a slasher movie. But, yeah, so actually it was named as a little nod to Jaws, called the Kittner Boy Readout Safe. And as they're saying it, I'm like, is this a Jaws reference? Like, this is so fun if this is just a little silly Jaws reference in Bad Santa.
So I guess that brings us to basically the last question, which is, does it stay in our collection?
I say it makes the final cut and it stays.
I say it makes the cut and it stays. I thought, going into this, I thought that I might be. I knew you weren't gonna say let it go, but I thought that I might change my tune on it and say, no, it's got to go. I've grown out of it. But you know what? It has the heart. It's a real film. It's not just a shock comedy.
Yeah, it really holds up.
And it's well made. Like the opening scene, I don't know if it was a oneer, but it was like it starts on this beautiful shot that goes from outside into the bar, and
Sure.
you got his narration and leading up to his thoughts of suicide and stuff like that. And it's you can tell that it's a very skilled filmmaker at work who's making this, and it's not 8 Crazy Nights.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And it's been a long time since I've seen this, probably, I'm going to say 8 to 10 years maybe since the last rewatch. And it still holds up for me. I still really enjoyed it. Maybe I didn't find it as funny as I, have in the past, just because my, I think a lot, like we said, a lot of the humor is very early 2000s, and there's some really silly things in there that I just don't necessarily find funny anymore. But I find the heart of the movie still to be there, and I really like it. It remains my favorite Christmas film.
Awesome. So that's it for tonight, and I hope that everybody enjoyed this conversation. Remember to subscribe on your podcatcher of choice. And we'll see you for the next one as we continue to go through our DVD collection and DVD clutter.
Bad Santa.
I beat up some kids today, but it's for a purpose. Made me feel good about myself.
You need many years of therapy.